Karen and I went to Ecuador in January of this year. And so we had a wonderful time. We had about 10 participants with us. And some logistics about the trip. We flew in and out of Quito via Miami. And that was, well, we'll skip the flight terror stories. Let's say that we missed our connection in Miami. But aside from that, so we're there for 10 days, January 11th. A lot of you are familiar with Road Scholar as a wonderful tour company, but you wouldn't associate them with bird tours that much. Karen and I have taken them many places like the Normandy beaches, India. We did a Costa Rica non-birding tour, and they're a wonderful company to work with. And we were looking for this time frame. So we looked at Field Guys. They didn't have anything in that time frame, and some of the other companies. And we just, well, try Road Scholar. And so we found that they had a series of these same tours, one after the other. This one fell right in our wheelhouse for us. And we're very happy that we ended up with them. One of the things about Road Scholar is we ended up with a native guide the whole time. Some of the other companies that we have taken, like with Field Guides, with Red Hill Birding, there has been an American primary contact and then occasionally a native person. The native guide was there the whole time. And so he was able to give us some focus on the culture of the country of Ecuador, history, the people, foods, and so on. So we found that very interesting. And that's typical of Road Scholar type of programs, and that they go beyond just sightseeing, they go deeper into where you're at. So we very much appreciated that. So some numbers, there will not be a quiz at the end, at least. So we know that there's about 11,000 species throughout the world right now. And according to eBird, there have been about almost 1,700 species observed in Ecuador. Now, Ecuador is the size of Colorado, so very small compared to the rest of the United States and so on, but all those birds in there. During our tour, I say we had 268 species observed by me, because, you know, when you're in a group of people and 8 people will see that bird and 2 people won't, I was usually those 2 people that didn't. But I still saw 268 different species there. And so, and accumulated 173 lifers during the 10 days. So we were very pleased with that. One of the things that we found about Ecuador in particular is that we were at locations that focused on having feeders there. Now the feeders weren't always seed feeders. Well, there were no seed feeders, but bananas and hummingbirds. So hummingbird feeders every place we went. And then bananas were tucked in trees. They were hanging on branches. They were all over the place. We did take a couple of trail hikes. And first of all, it's a very hilly country. And so the terrain is difficult for hiking and tends to be wet as you're going down the path and so on a steep path or up a steep path. And we didn't see any birds on those trails anyway. If we did, they're way up in the canopy somewhere, hard to identify. So most of our birding, 90% at least of the birds that we saw, we were in a deck area covered with an open space with birds that came in for various bananas or the hummingbirds themselves. So we'll take a quick look at the map here. I know this is a little difficult to see, but in the middle we have Quito. Quito is a huge city. It's long, narrow. It's 45 miles long, top to bottom, and it is just to the west of the Andes Mountains. So we started in Quito, and then we drove to the west to Sachatamia Lodge. Am I saying that right? Sachatamia?
Close enough.
Thank you. As the toucan flies, it's only about 23 miles from Quito. But it takes a couple hours by all these windy roads up the mountains. And then, so we spent 3 nights there, and then we drove past Quito down to San Isidro, down in the right. So we're then on the eastern slope of the Andes. We passed over the Continental Divide to get to San Isidro, where we spent 3 nights there as well. So let's just start with the birds that we had hoped to see in Ecuador, and one of them are the anpitas. And so we saw 4 different species of anpitas while we were there. This is my favorite, the chestnut crowned, just a beautiful bird that would be called up by the guides at the various places that we were at. And so we saw this one, and then the giant and the yellow-breasted and tawny, all at different places. But the anpitas are the type of bird that you just want to see when you're there in Ecuador. Another bird we saw was the golden-headed quetzal. Now we're familiar, most of us are familiar with the resplendent quetzal, and we have seen that in Costa Rica. The golden-headed, not necessarily endemic, but it was a new quetzal for us. And so this one flew in during a rainstorm, as a matter of fact, and it still has that very bright breast on it that we are so familiar seeing in quetzals. So that was a great look at it. On the other end of the spectrum, we had the torrent duck. Now this duck, maybe a little smaller than a mallard, but lives and on wild ranging whitewater rivers, dives under the water, and this particular one is like an immature male. The full-blown males, more colorful heads and so on, but that's where their habitat is, and that's where they feed. Along the sides of the river, you can see the water bubbling up underneath this one and jumping in and out of the water without any problems at all. So definitely a must-see bird for us while we were there in Ecuador. I love this one. It just doesn't get any more colorful than this. We were having lunch and this bird showed up, so I almost missed lunch because I'm outside snapping pictures of it. Just a gorgeous fruit eater, and I couldn't get enough of that one. And then the Andean condor. Now we saw 4 or 5 of them, and 4 of them were up about 2 miles up in the sky, little dots, and you could see them with the binoculars. And this one was perched on a hill not too far, and Karen and the guide are like, "What? There it is," and where? And I could not find the darn thing. And they're like, "It's right there." And finally it took off. Oh, there it is, after leaving me. But yeah, we did get the condor while we were there, kind of another one of those must-see type of birds that you want to see in Ecuador. And then finally, the cock of the rock is another one of those must-see birds. That was the top of my list. I just wanted to see that. I've known about it for years and seen videos of it. We were at what is called a lek, an area where the males and females come together. But this lek was high up in the trees, and it was a dull, gray, rainy morning, backlit as they're up there. We just didn't get good views while they were up there. I mean, this is one of my better pictures, and it's not, in my opinion, a very good picture. But while we were there in the blind observing it, we did come across 2 other goonie birds that were kind of out of their range. And so we have Jeff Smith and Jeff Chapman, we just bumped into while we were there in the blind in the middle of Ecuador. And so they're avid birders in this area here. And it was just such a pleasant surprise to bump into them while we were birding there. So hummingbirds are a big draw in Ecuador. As I said, there are hummingbird feeders everywhere along the way. And we know that there have been, according to eBird again, 366 species or so. Is that about right, Dennis, you think?
Yeah, they moved it up to 367.
They added a hummingbird. Well, that's your job to get.
I'm gaining ground on them.
Okay, good. Well, 132, almost half of all the hummingbirds in the world can be found in Ecuador. And so they are just spectacular birds. Here's a picture of one of the feeders that we visited there. I counted, I think, 11 hummingbirds just kind of massing around this particular feeder. And I had a couple of favorites along the way. Here's a racket tail, white booted, and white booted because of the feathers around the feet. And they always kind of remind me of Uggs. You know, remember the old Ugg? And so, but then you can see that long tail, racket tail that hangs off the back of it. So I took a gazillion pictures of these. And then what another picture, hummingbird that I got, the violet-tailed sylph. And yeah, that tail was just as purple and blue as you could get. Amazing that they can fly around the woods with that tail just like that. Here's a sapphire wing, and I just able to catch that when the wing is extended. You can see that sapphire blue underneath the wings there. That's a beautiful bird. One of my favorites was the shining sunbeam, and I'll show you another picture of it in a second. I want you to look at the size of this bird, because I took a picture of another hummingbird in the same position on the same feeder. So there you got the giant hummingbird. You can see it's roughly twice the size of this normal size hummingbird. The giant hummingbird, it looks like a robin flapping its wings as fast as it can. It's a large hummingbird that appears there. The thing that I liked about the shining sunbeam is its back. We're so used to seeing the colorful gorget on hummingbirds. This one had the color on the back as well, and it just showed so nicely for this particular picture. Here's another picture. Look at this white-necked Jacobin, and it somehow had speared a moth, and it was flying around with this moth on its bill, but it was still able to feed. It would go up to the feeders and feed somehow through the moth. I don't know if he's using the moth like a straw or something or what, but it was just kind of weird to see that. So that's just some of the hummingbirds that we saw. There are lots of beautiful hummers there, but I want to switch now to tanagers. And we are used to talking and seeing summer tanagers, scarlet tanagers here. And perhaps you know that those are not really tanagers. The scarlet and the summer are really part of the cardinal family. So if you have never been south, you have never really seen a tanager. So we have a couple of pictures of tanagers for you. This is a mountain tanager. The mountain tanagers, higher elevations, beautiful colors. Look at the flame-faced tanager. You're first drawn to the head, but look at the kind of the sea foam blue on the shoulders. There's some others of these same species that it's the whole side practically is that sea foam blue. Just a beautiful picture or a beautiful bird. You may not be able to see it there, but it was raining, so you can see the droplets behind it coming down. Here's my favorite new tanager. And I've just never seen a bird that green before. Just amazing. I couldn't get enough of the glistening green tanager. Another one, the golden nape tanager, posed nicely for me. I got a nice shot of it here. But the the gold up top here, but the beautiful blue on the breast. This next one, the rufous throated, at first glance, it didn't look very interesting, but the more I looked at it, the more I liked it. The multicolors on the chin, the scalloped feathers all around it, just a very interesting tanager. That was a lifer for us. We had never seen that one before. This one was as curious about me as I was about him. He was taking a look at us. So many other tanagers, but those were some of my favorites. Here's a couple more birds that we found down there that we really enjoyed. The red-headed barbets, we have the male and the female there. They were pretty friendly. They would come out on a regular basis. But more interesting to me than the red-headed barbet, which are gorgeous birds, the toucan barbet. Just look at the colors on that and the ferocity of it. I mean, maybe it's just a shot, but I just really like that look of that particular toucan barbet. Yeah, we saw, this is the only mott that we saw. I mean, we've seen many motts up in Central America. Ecuador, we only saw the rufous mott while we were there. Similarly, the trogon, this was the only trogon that we saw down there, whereas in Costa Rica and other Central American countries, you will see a wider variety of trogons, but this one came in nicely for us. Here's I'll mispronounce it, but cacique. Cacique, thank you, John. And so you can see it's perched on a bunch of bananas that was laid out for birds to come in there, and this one came in kind of claiming its territory. I like the flower piercers. If you look carefully, the tip of the bill is hooked over. And so as the name implies, what it will do is it will feed the same nectar inside of a flower, but instead of going in, it just goes through. Using that bill creates a hole and feeds from the inside of the flower. This is my favorite new flycatcher. And so this, like any other flycatcher, would fly out, grab something, come back to the same perch, fly out, come back. I just love the colors on this particular one. The rose-faced parrot, I think this is the only parrot or parakeet that we saw down there, but there was a family group of probably 6 or 8 of them at the tree, but a beautiful parrot. My favorite new woodpecker, cinnamon, just the colors on that. I mean, cinnamon, yeah, but it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous color. The Choco toucan, now Choco is a region, so hence the name Choco toucan, used to be grouped together with the yellow-billed toucans, but were split. And so this one is specific to this particular area, the Choco region. And then the plate-billed mountain toucan. And plate-billed, if you look at that little yellow in front of the eye on the bill, it's actually a raised piece of the bill. It's not just all flat there, so it's a plate sitting there, hence the name. Here's a crimson rump toucanet. Toucanet's a little smaller. You can see the bill's a little smaller. I love this particular view of it as it's ready to pounce on a banana down in the feeding area. Looks fierce though. So that's just sort of a overview. And we put at the bottom more to come, and Matt will share sometime this evening why there's more to come. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Mike. Up next, Dennis, with Australia. So we're jumping halfway across the world.
Collecting checks for it.
Okay.
How are we doing on time?
Right.
So using this here?
Yep. Yeah, just Eric, should take you to the next.
Okay. So now you guys know why I've been to Ecuador 10 times. It's a great country to visit. But every now and then I go other places. So this past year I was in Australia. I had organized one of my field guides birding trips where I get, a bunch of my friends together and we pick a place to go. And this time it was Australia. So I was there for 3 weeks on that tour, but then Melissa, my lovely wife, she wanted to go to Australia as well, but she didn't want to go on the bird tour, so I had to do double duty, rats. So I was there for 6 weeks and we covered quite a bit of the country. So this will give you kind of an idea of all the places that we were. You can see we started, yeah, that kind of works. So we started out down here in Sydney, both on the tour and also when Melissa arrived. And from there, we did a little bit of birding. We went to Royal National Park and a couple of parks within Sydney. Then we flew down to Melbourne and we spent some time in this area here. Worked our way through the backlands here and eventually made our way up to Adelaide. And once we were in Adelaide, then we flew to, I lost my cursor. There it is. So then we flew down to Perth. And from Perth, we did a circular loop here, going all the way down to Albany, back to Perth. And from Perth, then we flew to Alice Springs. We spent 3 or 4 days in Alice Springs. Then the tour ended. We flew back to Sydney. Melissa showed up. And we birded some of the same places when it was Melissa and I, because I wanted her to catch up on a few iconic birds, one of those in particular being the superb lyrebird. And then from there, we flew up to the Gold Coast, hitched a ride and ended up at Lamington National Park. There's a lodge there called O'Reilly's, which is world famous. We spent 5 days there because the last time I was there, I just felt too rushed. We had a great time there. We hitched a ride back to Brisbane, flew from Brisbane up to Cairns. And from Cairns, we did a couple of excursions. We went up into the Daintree area. We went up to the Atherton Tablelands. We went out to the Great Barrier Reef. And then we flew from Cairns all the way down to Tasmania. And we had 3 or 4 days there and visited some of the national parks in that area as well. So the only thing that we didn't cover was, the far north here. And Melissa, when I just came home from Mexico, she informed me that we're going there next. So that's in July. So, which is a great time to be there because that's like the hottest part. And so that would be in their winters. That's the best time to be there. So I have a few iconic birds too. I didn't take a lot of bird pictures. I'm not really a bird photographer. I'm more of a storyteller. So you're getting a lot of stories tonight. So anyway, these are rainbow lorikeets, and that's a species that you can readily find in a lot of places throughout Australia. And these guys were just very confiding. I think everybody on the tour, let's see who was here. Diane was on the tour. Joe was on the tour. That might be all here tonight. But at any rate, I'm sure everybody's got much better pictures of these birds than I have. And of course, the iconic laughing kookaburra. So I had to include that in here. So a great big kingfisher, basically. And powerful owl. This was a really tough bird for us to pick up. We went to several locations trying to find this bird. Eventually, we ended up in a little town park because our guide, I think, had done some e-birding and found out that they were seeing this owl there. So we did some tramping around in the woods and we eventually came across a pair of them where they had been nesting. So they were still in the same area. There were probably fledglings around there as well. But it's a pretty big owl. It's about the size of our great horned owl. And of course, there's a lot of iconic mammals. On the bird tour, we had koalas, we had echidnas, we had kangaroos, we had wallabies. What else did we have, Joe? A bunch of things. But then when Melissa came, I wanted to make sure she saw a lot of these iconic ones. She missed out on the koala, unfortunately, but we did get platypus. We had the echidna again. We had wombats. She had the kangaroos, the wallabies, the patamelons. So she got to see a lot of cool critters as well. But this particular place, which was kind of neat, I think it's known through the tourist industry. This is a great place to look for koalas. So everybody goes there to look for koalas. We had some free time, so we went as well. But with all these tourists coming in there, there's always going to be, feeding of birds and all that kind of stuff. So there were parrots all around, and one particular species was the Australian king parrot. And it was as we were looking for the koalas, we had this king parrot. He just kept swooping over our group. Again, this way, and then he came back this way, and then back this way. I knew what he wanted. So I had a plastic bag in my pocket. So the next time he started one of his swoops, I started wrinkling the bag. And that happened. So it's pretty easy to make friends in Australia. So you can see some of our crew back there. There's Surasek in the background. He was talking to Surman, who hadn't arrived yet, and Daryl. So we had a large contingency. I think there were about 10 of us, 10 besides me on the trip. This bird sat on my head for several minutes. So I was on social media all across the country, all across the world, I'm sure. And then finally he just decided to go away. It wasn't the only time one of these birds landed on my head, though. We were up at Lamington and I had the same thing happen. I was out birding and I'm looking through my binoculars and suddenly I get whacked in the head, and it was another one of these guys. And I didn't even have to wrinkle a bag for that one. So here's our intrepid crew. We were out, this is in the stretch where we had left Melbourne and we were working our way towards Adelaide. We had gotten into the outback somewhat. It's very dry, scrubby areas, and the place that we were staying was the little desert lodge. And unfortunately, in all the fires that just occurred, we've lost the little desert lodge. It was completely wiped out. So that's very sad. The people that owned that and ran that place were just really, really swell people. Very nice folks. They all made it out okay, but the lodge is a total loss. So we're walking down this road and I spotted some tracks, and they looked to me like they would be mouthy fowl tracks. So we knew that the birds were in the area, and then shortly after that, Daryl spotted one on the left side of this road here. So we did catch up with that bird. Very iconic bird, really tough one to get. We were very happy to see that. I don't have a picture of it. I bet Daryl does though. And then another key bird that we saw on that day was the pink cockatoo, which used to be Major Mitchell's. And if you get to see this bird with its crest completely raised, it actually has a rainbow of colors going through the crest. It's red and orange and yellow bands running through the crest. It's a spectacular bird. But this turned out to be a nest site right above where we were just stopping for a lunch break. But with total luck that we got to see this bird. It caused me to buy a round of beers. So we made it out further west. We did a lot of birding then. Eventually we made it back to Alice Springs area. And now in that area, we ran into a bowerbird, and we had several bowerbirds on the trip between what I did with the tour group and then along with Melissa. I think I had 5 or 6 different bowerbirds. But this one in particular, I hadn't seen before. It's the western bowerbird. It's a very pretty bird. You've got that purple nape. And there's the bower. You can see the bower right here. See how my cursor goes? Yeah, it's going. So here's the bower. So they build this type of bower is called an altar bower. And there are several different ways that bowerbirds will build a bower. This one in particular is called an altar. And this is done purely for courtship. This is not a nest. This is purely used just to attract the female and show the female just how cool he is. So he'll decorate it. You can see all the decorations in here. And they'll pick the color, a favorite color. And so in this case, it's white. So everything this bowerbird male could find that was white, he's adding it to his repertoire here to enhance the beauty of his bower. So then the female will come and she will actually enter the bower. And once he gets into the bower here, then he knows that she's very interested. And then he really starts dancing and has a good time. And if she's that impressed, then they'll mate. So anyway, it was pretty cool to be able to see that. One of the birds in the outback that's pretty special is the spinifex pigeon. Spinifex is a type of grass, and so there are regions where there's a lot of that around. And so there's a spinifex bird, and then there's this spinifex pigeon. It's probably one of the more spectacular pigeons that I've seen, if you don't count Papua New Guinea. Right, John? There's some. This one's not bad, but yeah. And so then after the tour is over, I returned to Royal National Park with Melissa because I did want her to see that superb lyrebird. We did get that. We saw probably the exact same bird that we saw on the main tour. But one of the birds we missed on the main tour was this frogmouth. And the funny thing is, after seeing where this frogmouth was and then looking back at my picture, we were standing right next to the tree that this bird was in, and we just didn't pick it up on the tour. It may not have started nesting yet. It's surprisingly, it's sitting on a nest. That's what a frogmouth nest looks like. So you can see just a few little twigs kind of sticking out from underneath it. Next bird up in the same park. This is the sulfur crested cockatoo, another iconic bird. This one, his crest is all flared out because there was a monitor on the ground that was about this long. for those at home, I'm stretching my arms out about as far as I can. And so he was just squawking like crazy, just wanted that lizard out of his area. So he was just, making a big fuss. This is where we ended up on Thanksgiving. We're at Lamington National Park. We're at O'Reilly's. And so this is a Australian brush turkey. So that's the closest we came to celebrating Thanksgiving. He was too fast for me. I couldn't catch up with him.
No relationship with turkeys, however.
However, you're absolutely right, John, but work with me, okay?
Okay.
So this is just to give you a feel for what the forest, what the trails look like up there in Lamington. And O'Reilly's does have a very nice series of trails. We spent 5 days there. We walked probably on all of the trails that they have. And you can see it's a very lush vegetation. So different from what you saw in my slides from the actual tour that we did when we were in the south, when we were in the west, and in the center. So this is very, very lush, nice tree ferns all over the place and well-maintained trails. So it was very easy walking. And here we have to play a little game. Get this started, because that's Melissa and she's on a bender, you can tell. Sure. Nope, that didn't do it. Go back one. Oop, oop. I'm going wrong.
Yeah. Nope, we're both trying.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, make it work.
There we go.
There we go. So this is the other lyrebird. This is the Albert's lyrebird. And we had fantastic luck finding this bird. Every day that we were there for 5 days, we had this bird 5 days in a row. This is an immature bird, so he could care less that we're on the trail with him. And, so Melissa pulled out her phone and started filming, so I decided to pull out my phone and start filming. And the bird's just walking around between the field of. So that was so cool. I think we should look at it again. How did you do that? Press that little red guy in the middle?
Yeah, well, that's
Okay.
the mouse.
Okay.
Hit the play button.
Oh, okay. So there he is. So just like the other lyrebird, they're mimics. They do a lot of vocalizations. No, there's a lot of birds in the background, unlike Ecuador when Mike was walking out. Mike's gone now, I can't even pick on him. But when Mike was walking around in Ecuador, he wasn't seeing or hearing a lot of birds, but in Australia, especially in O'Reilly, we had all sorts of birds around us all the time.
That bird making that song, all the.
That was not him, no. This young bird was just busy foraging. So we would go back and have meals at the lodge and everybody was talking about how they wanted to see the lyrebird and they were never finding them. So we were just very lucky. We found them almost on every trail that we walked on. So, okay, so I hit the little red guy.
Yeah, just move over.
You want to just do it. I'm quickly challenged. Okay, so this is another bowerbird. So this is the satin bowerbird. Again, this is the altar style. And he's decorating his, you can see he's moving sticks around and making sure it's just right, because women are very picky with the furniture. So, and then you can see it's decorating with blue items. So whatever that they can find in the parking lots around the lodge or whatever, they'll pick all those things up. They could be bottle caps, pen tops, gum wrappers, you name it. But if it's blue and he likes color blue, he'll bring it to his bower. Where we were staying, the room that we actually had probably within 70 yards of where our room was, we had 3 different satin bowerbird bowers that we could go and visit. This was the 3rd one I visited. And it was raining that day. And I shot this with my phone. So he was about from me to from me to Matt. That's how close we were to that bird. So then this is another iconic bird that I really wanted Melissa to see. This is the southern cassowary. And it's the male that tends to the young bird, and you can see there's a chick here with this male, and that's when they're most deadly. This is an animal that can kill people and has killed people. And you can, I don't have a good picture. I should have included a picture that I've taken on a previous trip where if you look at the inside toe of the 3 toes, there's not really a toenail there. It's like a spike, and that spike can be about like that long. So they'll kick you to death. Oh, yeah, no, things are. Well, The funny thing was, Melissa really wanted to see this bird, so we had a guide for this particular part of our trip, and we went down to this beach area. And so we're all we're barely out of the parking lot, and I'm up front, and Melissa and Patrick, the guide, are sort of to my left and behind me. And what I didn't realize is these birds are pretty much habituated because they're hanging around the beach. You know, I'm sure they're getting handouts from people, which is very bad. So he's coming towards me. And I'm like loving this, I'm getting great pictures, and then I turn, I can see they're all running away. So I followed them, I ran away as well. But I have one more video to share, and so Matt can over. Okay, so here it is walking along, coming off of the beach, but this gives you a little more perspective on how large the bird is. Because he's gonna go walking past the picnic table here. So, a pretty cool bird to see. So after all the fun that we had up in the Cairns area, we did go up into the Daintree, which there's a river you can go boating on, and you can look for crocodiles and things like that, and some other iconic birds. We went up into the Atherton tablelands where we saw even more bowerbirds, and we saw bowerbirds that created different bowers than that altar one that I showed you. There's one species called the golden bowerbird that actually builds a tower. That tower can be, 3 or 4 feet tall. And that's the structure they use to attract the females, and then they kind of just dance around that tower. Then there's another one called the hoop-billed bowerbird. And what they do is they'll clear an area on the floor of the forest, and they get all the debris out, and then they'll go and they'll pick specific leaves off of trees. And those leaves are about this big, and they don't like the color green on the top side. They like the color green on the underside. So they pick all these leaves and they lay them down upside down and create a carpet of this pale green color all through their display area. So that's a third type of bower that bowerbirds can utilize. But enough about lambing that area. So we're now moving on down to Tasmania, and my wife had set up a couple of different tours for us to do, and one of them was to go out to Maria Island, which is an island that has almost all of the Tasmanian endemics on that island. But we were on a regular tour, so it wasn't like we were out birding. I did manage to get 8 of the 8 of the 12 that were there. But basically, we were walking on this beach because we wanted to get out to some, you can see in the far distance, there's like a little yellow square there. Those are some very beautiful cliffs. So that was our goal, is to walk out there. Of course, I was birding and making sure everyone else that was on the tour got to see the green rosella, and the next bird here, which was an easy one for people to see, was the Tasmanian native hen. And I guess you could consider that, somewhat similar to one of our moorhens or coots. It's kind of close to that. So that was one of the endemics. A bird that's not one of the endemics is the Cape Barren goose, but I just loved it. It's, as far as geese go, it's a pretty cool looking goose. If you notice, the legs are actually very hot. They're red, very reddish pink. And then when it gets down to the webbed feet, it's pitch black. So it's kind of a cool combination there. And I really love the bill of this bird as well. So it was one of my favorite birds to see. We did have it on the main tour. And once again, we got it on Tasmania. Then our last tour that we did, we were in Mount Field National Park, and quite a few trails in there. I picked up a couple more endemics in that area. But I've never ever seen tree ferns like these. These are just immense. So you can see Melissa, we only had one other person besides our guide on this trip. So it was a nice personal tour. But you can see the 3 of them standing there. And I mean, the trunks of these tree ferns are as wide as the people. And I've never seen anything quite like that. Pretty incredible. So I think that's it for my Australia. I do want to report that I just came back from Mexico. And we were talking a lot about hummingbirds. So I got 9 new hummingbirds on the trip. I'm up to 235 species of hummingbirds now. So next week, Cuba, 2 more. Good luck. Any questions? Perfect, okay.
All right, up next we
Thanks,
got Rob Perez,
So,
UK and France. All right, so I was asked by a couple friends if I wanted to accompany them to London and Paris. Of course, I said yes. However, my specific role was tour guide. So I studied abroad in London. I've traveled around Europe a lot, but I'd never been to France, so it was my first time in France. So throughout my time in the UK, I've seen a lot of their common backyard birds. So although this wasn't specifically a birding trip, I did have a couple goals and targets that I wanted to get to kind of clean up my common backyard UK species. So we'll go through some of the things that I saw, but the hotel we stayed in was right next to Hyde Park, which for those of you who've been to London, connects to Kensington Gardens. So it was a nice, easy walk through both of those places down to Buckingham Palace, St. James's Park. So here's a couple of my pictures through those parks here. The last day that I was in the UK, I went to a place in North London called the Walthamstow Wetlands. And I kind of did this on purpose, but I reached out to a UK birder who had a bunch of eBird lists there and played stupid and kind of said, "Oh, I'm going to this place. Do you have any suggestions on where I go?" And he said, "Great, I'll be there tomorrow." Perfect. So I walked around with a couple of the UK birders and they were able to point out some more common species for me. So for those of you, again, who've been to Europe, these are probably the two most common birds you'll see in the parks, the Eurasian robin and the great tit. Coincidentally, that bird is the same one that I'm holding in my hand, the great tit. So Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens, people will coax the birds over and hand feed them. So all I did was hold my hand out and within 30 seconds, one landed on me. So, and then a fun fact about the robin, it is not related to our robin, but our robin is named Robin because of this one. So, all right, going through some more of the parks, tufted ducks were everywhere, in all the ponds and lakes over there. They were very, very common in St. James's Park. So that's a park right next to Buckingham Palace, full of waterfowl, a lot of introduced species. So I got my green-winged teal over at that park, as well as the pelicans. But still a really nice park to go to. And then these rose-ringed parakeets are an introduced species, but they are very loud and very numerous, and you can find them in every park. We took a day trip to Hampton Court. So the history people out there, that's Henry VIII's favorite palace. This is the Georgian section. So Henry VIII did not see this part of the palace, but nevertheless, a nice place to visit. Not a whole lot of birds here, but I did see my very first new bird of the trip. Didn't get a great picture. I was here for about 2 weeks and never saw any sun. So pictures were not great, especially of birds and trees, but that first new bird was the missel thrush. So not a whole lot of diversity here at Hampton Court, but this carrion crow was very tame and allowed me to take pictures. So these guys are very, very common over there as well. Very loud and mischievous. Some of my favorite European birds are the wagtails. So there's this white wagtail and the gray wagtail. again, both of them are pretty common. The white wagtail I saw right outside one of the tube stations. It was eating leftover sandwiches and other things. And this poor guy, I didn't even notice until I uploaded the picture that he's missing his foot. So, poor guy. And then the gray wagtail was in Kensington Gardens. So, you can kind of imagine from their name, they constantly wag their tails as they walk around. Lots and lots of gulls over there. Black-headed gulls are the most common ones you'll see, really in London and Paris. They are absolutely everywhere. European herring gull, so it's now a new species, so I was able to count it to move towards my life list. And then this common gull is one of the new species I saw, and one of the European birders I was with said that its name doesn't come from the frequency that it's seen. Its name comes from the common, like the square in the town, the town common. So that's where that name comes from. So done with Europe, or done with UK, took the Eurostar over to Paris, again, first time there. So we went to Louvre, we went to Sainte-Chapelle Chapel, which is what that picture is, which was my favorite place I went during that trip. Very, very pretty. But on the January 1st, we had a relaxation day, which means for me, I walked around Paris about 14 miles that day. So walked through some of the big parks, such as this park here, which is the main park in Paris. Birds I saw there were the great cormorant, which is, again, very, very common over there. You'll see them all over the place, London and Paris. They act a lot like our double-crested cormorants. Wood pigeons, very common. In fact, when I was abroad there, I saw one on the menu and I did try it. So these guys were everywhere as well. And they're pretty big. They're like, football-sized birds. They're not very bright, but so this really boring looking bird is a dunnock. And believe it or not, this guy was at the top of my target list because the bird book says, it's so common, look outside the window and you'll see it. I have never seen it. So, but I was glad to see it. After doing some research, I learned that it's part of the Accentor family, which normally those birds are found in mountains. This one is not. These birds don't live in mountains, so that makes it kind of unique as part of that family. All right. If you've been to Europe, you know these two, the blackbird and the blue tit, so they are also everywhere. Blackbirds are pretty much like our robins. They act just like them, walk around digging in the dirt. You'll see them in all the parks. And then the blue tits are just like our chickadees. All right, so some more common species. That's a brown creeper. Oh no, that's a short-toed tree creeper. Exactly like a brown creeper. And that's a chicken. No, that's a marsh tit. Exactly the same as our chickadees. And that is a firecrest. So exactly like our firecrest or our kinglets. There's another bird, the gold crest, which looks very similar to a ruby crown kinglet. And this firecrest looks like a golden crown kinglet. They act exactly the same. Then I saw a warbler. This is what European warblers look like. They are not pretty like ours. They all look the same and they're notoriously hard to differentiate. This is a chiffchaff. So, I have a funny name for that guy. And then my biggest surprise was the peafowl, which of course is not native, but was a nice addition to some of the parks. There were 3 of them that came right up to me. Asked if I had anything, I told them no, and they walked away, so. But the complete list of the new species I saw, I was able to add, about 11 species to my life list here in Europe. So I'm up to about 120 species. So missile thrush, the tree creeper, dunnock, 2 woodpeckers, the middle spotted and the lesser spotted woodpecker, stock dove, which looks exactly like a regular pigeon, except it has black eyes, the barnacle goose, and then common sandpiper, common gull, and common snipe. So overall, very good trip. Although it'll be a while before I go back. I gotta let the finances recover from that. But no, I'd encourage people, if they haven't gone to Europe for birds, to try it. A lot of European species are overlooked and they shouldn't be, because they're very, very nice. So that is all from me.
Okay.
Yes. Any questions? What was that? It tasted very bland. It was like duck, so didn't really have much of a flavor.
All right, up next, we got John Baker, with a variety of birds, from pretty much what it looked like everywhere from Europe to Indonesia. So geographical range on this one.
I could have brought, African and Antarctic birds too.
Yeah, sorry, should have let you know.
Okay, well, this isn't the,
So arrow, or if you want me to drop it, I can.
okay, so,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna start with a map. Which oh yeah. Lesbos is a island, Greek island, off Turkey, and it's a wonderful spot for the spring migration, which is why I was there. I didn't get any pictures of anything like that, but okay, hit that one. But there's a nice mask strike on the island. Enough of Greece. Lesser Sundas are islands there in Indonesia, circle there. We hit 3 of them on a tour. I'd give you the names, but they don't mean anything. This is on one of the islands. This is on the island of Komodo, which is just off the main island of Flores. And Komodo is actually more famous not for birds, but for the dragon. And I hit this, oh, that one.
I guess.
And that disappears. This guy's about 10 feet long. You might wonder what I'm doing standing there right next to this thing, which eats water buffalo and humans. Well, there's a ranger standing next to me. He had a stick. What the stick was gonna do, I have no idea. Oops, I don't want to do it again. Scotland, I love Scotland. My relatives came from Scotland a couple of centuries ago, but never mind. I went there in the winter in the Highlands to see 2 specific birds, velvet scoter and the western capercaillie. The capercaillie is a large grouse. I saw them, but I didn't get any pictures of them. I got tits. So after the previous slide, you can recognize these tits, which indeed look exactly like chickadees, but also finch. Blue tit. And the crested tit, we spent a couple of days waiting for this crested tit on top to show up. And when I took this picture, this was the Scottish willow ptarmigan. Since then, the new taxonomy, it's a different species, it's a red grouse. Years ago, it was a red grouse, then it was ptarmigan, now it's a red grouse again. Yes, well, these things switch. This last year, I lost 10 species off my life list from lumps, but I gained 35 from splits. India, from Scotland, I went to India. I mean, they're right next to each other, right? Went to Rajasthan, this red dot, it's in the desert. Why go birding in the desert? Well, if I can have the maestro. I was told that there were 6,000 of these in the area. I think there are only 4,000 in this picture now. We're on the roof of a one-story building next to this feeding area. They're one of the 15 species of cranes. I had seen all but two when I saw this one. My plan in 2019 was to go to China in 2020 and see the Siberian crane, and on the way back, stop here in India and see this crane. These cranes breed in Western Siberia. So seeing them on the winter grounds in India is much easier. And but 2020 travel to China was stopped. So I finally, this was in like 2023, I went to India to see these so that I had just one species of crane I hadn't seen yet. So we'll get Bali. You can see all the endemics in Bali in about 4 days. And it's a beautiful island. The scenery is magnificent. The birding is easy. The Bali Mina on the left used to be called the Rothschild's Mina. At one point, there were 5 left in the wild. Now there are about 500 in the wild. It's not that the bird was going extinct, they were going extinct in the wild. Zoos had them, people had them. It's a very popular bird to be in your home singing. Of course, it's illegal to trap them everywhere in Indonesia, however, that's not enforced very well. But through a captive breeding and release program, they have restored them to their natural habitat. Here 2. And they, I saw 12 of them. They're not hard to see. You just walk around. Oh, yeah. The one on the right, the Java banded pitta, is a little harder to see. But if you have enough mealworms with you and you know where the lek is, you can find them. Okay, I took a cruise in the Banda Sea and west, but mostly in the eastern part of it to some remote islands, the cruise. The boat was all teak, it had 8 cabins, so there were 16 birders, 2 guides and crew. Food was wonderful. I was only a day late getting there. The tour started in, I got a cursor, so.
There we go.
And I,
Yeah, you can move that.
okay. The cruise started here on the main island of New Guinea in Sarong. And but to get there, you have to go through Jakarta. My flight from Tokyo to Jakarta was half-hour away from landing when we diverted to Singapore because of grass fires at the Jakarta airport. And the pilot didn't think he had enough fuel to circle while they put them out. Okay, so I'm in Singapore. The crew has reached its flight limit for the day, so they, even though the airport was reopened, they couldn't fly until the next morning. So my midnight flight from Jakarta to Sarong, my non-refundable ticket was crash. And so I'm on my phone in the bus taking us to the hotel, bouncing along, trying to avoid typos and trying to get another flight. And the only thing I could get, everything was sold out except the flight I was going to take a day later in business class. 2 seats. I got one of them and somebody was next to me when I got there, so he got the other one. Anyway, so, but it rained the day before, so the tour hadn't seen any birds, so well, I didn't miss any. But from there, we went to Wago Island to see Wilson's Bird of Paradise. Formerly, they didn't know it was on this island, and so you had to take a very difficult trail on the main island to see it. The trail on Wago Island was reasonably easy. There were 3 leks. And so our group of 16 was split into 3 groups, and this is the lek I went to. This is an immature male, you can tell because it's still got bands on its breast. The adult male, it's a solid color. But he would come in and practice a few dance steps on this display limb and zoom off, zoom in, do a few moves, zoom off. And so I'm sitting, I just click away and I'm able to get this on picture. The other, in one of the other leks, they saw nothing. And the third lek, they saw a mature male, but a very distant view. So little luck never hurts any birding expedition. That afternoon, we went to see the red bird of paradise. That trail was a little tougher. There were ropes up the side of the mountain. So I did not bring my heavy camera with me. I was lucky to get myself up there. But let me tell you that the bare tree, there were 6 males up there, bright red, big birds of paradise. And when any female came anywhere close, they started doing these pole dance routines. Needless to say, none of the females were at least bit interested. Okay, this I went to South India, which very interesting place. We were up. I mean, you think India's hot, but we were up at reasonable altitude, 6,000–7,000 feet. And it's not hot, but the birding was pretty good. You saw, Dennis showed you the tawny frogmouth, which is one of the big frogmouths. These are the Sri Lankan frogmouths. They're about half the size. That's the male and the female. The female's the lighter colored one in the foreground, and the males, they're on their day roost. We had a guide that was absolutely unbelievable at finding these birds. the whole group walked right by this bush and didn't see a thing. We were told that the birds were in there. I didn't see a thing. But if you knew exactly where to look, you could see them in there. He also found this bay owl, which is in the barn owl family, on its day roost. This was unbelievable. The barn owl, this owl has a different roost every night. So it's not that he went to where he knew it was. He went to an area where he knew it might be, and he walked around. It took him about an hour to find it, but there it is, sleeping away. I would have been here last year for the members' night, except I was in Vietnam. Draft board tried to send me there some years ago. But I had to go on my own. The red dots, we started up north and came down south. The best part is the last dot, it's a national park near Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. And but the birding is good everywhere. It's the accommodations are not always the Ritz, but the food's good and the birding's good. Scarlet Minivet doesn't get any brighter than that. And this Germain's peacock pheasant, there, I forget, 4 or 5 peacock pheasants. They call that because of these blue dots on them, which are iridescent. You can see them on the wings, there's some on the tail. This is a female, so its tail's not so big as the males, but they look pretty similar. And in January, I was in China. So it finally opened up, and I finally went to see the Siberian crane. So I would have all the cranes.
Did you see it?
Hold that thought. Before the pandemic, George Archibald, one of the two founders of the International Crane Foundation, gave a talk at on cranes, and I chatted him and asked him about Poyang Lake in. That's the red dot that's just south of Wuhan where the pandemic started. And he said, yes, it's fairly easy to see the cranes there. And it's not too cold even in the winter, and you should go. But then after that, there was some talk that the level of the water in the lake had gone down. The cranes were in trouble. That was not so good. So I was not prepared for what I saw when I got there. And which was a lot of them. In the meantime, the Chinese government has stabilized the water level in the lake. They have added a nice restaurant, and I'm on a boardwalk here, which they put in, a nice place to walk along and watch the cranes. Let's see. Suppose I to see again. Oops, that's the next one. Well, that's the last picture. We went up after that to the Burma border, where we saw the Chinese wall. It was falling apart, and I asked the local guide how old it was, and he said, "Oh, it's just 2 years old." And I thought, God, their construction techniques are really poor. But anyway, we had to stop at the police station and register to go up to the border. And then when we got there, we had to have our pictures and passport photos taken on an app that went right back to the police to let them know that we actually got where we said we were going to go. And then we visited a lot of hides. So we spent a lot of time sitting in hides, waiting for the birds to come to us. Hides, blinds, we call them in this country. I'm sorry. The rest of the world calls them hides. We that sounds easy, but the trails to these places were terrible. But anyway, the last one, we're at about 9,000 feet. And we're sitting in the hide and looking at the white spectacle laughing thrushes, which are no relationship to thrushes, but bird decided he'd come in the hide too. So I mean, this is just a picture with my phone. So you can, I mean, I'm sitting there, so I'm even closer than, I mean, he's right there. And he didn't seem to be, I told him that the mealworms he's looking for are out there, not in here. Anyway. So if anybody is interested in any of these places I've been to, I'll be glad to chat with you and tell you who I went with, how it was, what to do. There are great birds in so many places.
Up next, we got Michael Reagan with a little closer to home, birds in and around DuPage County.
Thank you. I do not have a map. I assume we all know where DuPage County is. And I'll also probably be showing you birds that we've all seen before, but that being said, I think I'm more of a photographer than a birder, so bear with me, but I hope I have some pictures that we could enjoy. So one of my favorite places to bird and photograph around DuPage County is a place called Lincoln Marsh. And if anybody's ever been there, it's a swamp. It is. I can't really sell it any better than that, but it's a wonderful place if you've not been there to do some great bird watching and just seeing a lot of really fun things going on there. One of my favorite birds are herons, blue, green, black-crowned herons, etc. I don't have any black-crowned pictures of black-crowned herons with me tonight, but anyway, I was up there one time, and here's a green heron. But I want you to notice the little peninsula that it's standing on and the little rock out there, and you can even see some stuff in there. This is the exact same bird here. These pictures are taken about 10 seconds apart. So he saw something, and I assume it was a female. I'm not really sure. Maybe it was a she. I don't know. Maybe somebody knows more about that than I do. But the fact that this bird was doing that, I've never seen a green heron stand up and, prounce like that. I thought that was just really fun to watch. But yeah, these pictures were taken literally about 10 seconds apart. And I mean, you can see his legs are in the exact same spot. So, he just poked up, did that, and he came right back down. So I'm not really sure what was going on there, but it was a lot of fun to watch. Again, it's a couple more green herons. The green heron there on the left that's flying, you can't see it real well, but I will tell you that is a bluegill in its mouth. Picked one up and it ate that thing whole. And I'm thinking to myself, that bird is not big enough to eat a bluegill and still fly, but it did. So yeah, it ate that thing, swallowed it whole, and took it on. And I wish I could have caught it grabbing the bluegill, but at any rate, it was kind of fun to watch it devour that. And there were the other pictures right before it took off. So again, one of my favorite little birds there. Hanging out at Lincoln Marsh. The bird there, standing there with the big beard, I'm not really sure what's going on there. I assume it's mating season, because you normally don't see him quite like that, or at least I don't. I'm sure people here know more about that than I do, but I just looked at that was a beautiful bird. The other one, if you've been to Lincoln Marsh, there's these plastic piers that go out into the ponds, so to speak. And I took this picture because I'm sitting there going, I wonder what kind of bird that is. Then I realized behind it identifies it, so I could identify it as a blue heron because there's a little map right there to tell me exactly what it was. I would not have known otherwise. The irony, I just thought that was ironic. I just really enjoyed that photo. The grace of herons, again, watching the birds fly. And I love the picture there on the left, where you can see the wings just tipped up a little bit. It was one of my favorite photos just to watch it fly. The other one is watching a heron just take off and just starting to lift up a little bit and see how, like again, how graceful they are to watch flying. Those are one of my favorite things to go on. I go out there a lot and able to watch a lot of herons. And again, a couple of more heron photos. And I can see, both the underside of the wing and the top of the wing and the different colors, but yet they're very, very fun to watch and just, they fly around and they put on a great show for you. This is one of my favorite things to photograph. I call it two in the view. And this is where I get two or more species of birds in a single photo. And I try to do this as often as I can. And here again, a couple of blue herons being followed by, I believe that's a grackle, common grackle. Thank you, Matt. He has helped me identify birds before. So anyway, common grackle flying around, kind of harassing the heron more or less. But I do see herons get harassed by some different birds. And remember we talked about how graceful the herons are? When they're getting harassed, they're not as graceful. I'm taking a shot in the dark and saying that this heron got too close to a blackbird nest. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. And the photo there with the red-winged blackbird, the male, and then the mom blackbird coming along. And this heron, I would say grace is not one of the words I was used to describe its expression on its face. It just looks frazzled. And the other one, it was flying around, and that little blackbird was attacking. I was just watching it go, and I was having a ball watching this thing. And then one day I'm up there sitting out on one of those plastic piers, and I see a tern flying out there, and I take my camera out there, and I'm just watching it go fly across, and I'm just kind of practicing more than anything. And my camera, and I get home, and I look at this Caspin's tern, and I did not know this until I got to the photos on my computer. Had a goldfish in its mouth. And I'm going to just conjecture here that somebody said, oh, I don't need this goldfish anymore. I'm going to put it in the pond and give it the good life. Up until a bird sees this bright orange fish in the pond. I've gotten a couple of other bird photos out here of birds eating goldfish out of that pond. So when people put their goldfish in these ponds, this is what happens to them. And like I said, I didn't even realize that what was going on until I got home. And obviously, this picture zoomed in quite a bit, but I didn't realize that's what was going on until I got home and I saw, well, that was a little bit of a surprise for me. And speaking of being out of, and this is all taken again from that, almost the exact same spot as the heron's been taking from out there on one of the piers in Lincoln Marsh. Again, one day last year, I was out there and I saw some egrets. And egrets are sitting there picking up minnows left and right. And I got, it's not uncommon on a good day to go out to the marsh and come home with about 1,000 photos and then try to edit them down to, maybe a good 30 or 40 that I can actually keep. Some days I just really hate to throw away too many photos because I got such great photos, but here's the reflection of an egret, and you can see the minnow in its mouth and the other one right in the middle of trying to, capture it and pull it down to its throat and everything. So they're really fun to watch. For the non-birders out there, I like to call this swamp sushi. But watching an egret go after minnows, I think is a lot of fun. And it's just fun to watch how they, sit there and stalk these little minnows and just go for it. One day I was not out birding, I was out doing some other photographing. And I was if you know where Lyle High School is, there's a bridge behind there. And fall colors, and I wanted to catch some colors of the bridge. And I always had my big lens with me. And as I'm walking around, a hawk comes along. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to change my lens and start taking some pictures of this hawk. And the hawk was just giving me a beautiful show. And it was up against all the colors that were just, those beautiful autumn colors that I was actually trying to capture with this bridge. And the hawk was doing this for me. And so I followed it around and I got it, some against the blue sky and against the brown. And then pretty soon the hawk decides it's time for a grasshopper. So he jumped down there and I got him on a grasshopper. And he was eating that and he just put on a nice little show for me. Now the other hawk, I believe that's a Cooper's hawk.
It's red tail.
Is that a red tail? The other one, not the one with the grasshopper, the other one. That's
it's a juvenile red tail.
Juvenile red tail, thank you. If you've been to Lincoln Marsh, there was a screech owl in a tree, if you guys know where that was. And it was really hard to find, so I'm concentrating looking for this screech owl. I knew where it was, I knew exactly what tree it was, and I've got some photos of it, but not very good ones. And I hear a noise behind me, and I spin around, and here's this hawk eating a rabbit. About from me to about Matt, and I didn't even know it was there because I'm sitting there focusing this direction. And I turned around and I took probably 50 or 60 pictures. I got down on the ground and looked right at it, and it gave me the look, and it just kind of said, I am not sharing this rabbit with you. And he did not. I just want to be clear, I did not get any of this rabbit, as tasty as it looked. And I got to watch him eat this rabbit, and I got some just fantastic pictures of well, you know, and I showed it to my wife, and my wife is giving me, oh, that's a poor rabbit and everything. And I'm like, no, the other rabbits are like, that was Ned. He was a jerk. We're glad to see him go. That's how you got to look at it. Again, the egret, just a reflection. I just love that photo. I put that in my home. And then, I had to say around DuPage County, because if anybody's ever been down to Rock Run Rookery and seen the pelicans down there, I was down there last fall, and you can see the red trees in the background and the reflection of the pelicans. And it was a wonderful day, and I was down there. Probably took 1,500 photos that day of watching these pelicans. I got a couple more pelican photos here, but just seeing them down there, if you've not had a chance to go down there, they're really fun to watch. I can spend hours just watching the pelicans, fishing and playing with each other and taking off and landing, and just seeing how they come along. They're just, you know, they put on a show, and you know, like I said, they're not exotic birds by any stretch, but they're fun. And those are just, I enjoy watching those. So if you have a chance to do that, I highly recommend it. And it doesn't involve a long plane flight. These are a couple of swallows that I took. One is at Lincoln Marsh, and the other one I took at Morton Arboretum on the bridge on the way to Thornhill Center, looking down the water. And I got the swallow and the reflection of the swallow in the water. If anybody's ever had to photograph swallows, you know how hard these things can be to photograph. They're really fun to photograph, though. But just seeing that one with the reflection in the water was one of my favorite photos that I just really enjoyed seeing him kind of come across there. And you know, that's where you just take your camera, take 1,000 pictures, and hope 3 show up, right? And that's kind of how that one worked out. But back to Lincoln Marsh. If you guys all recall, about a year or so ago, there were some baby owls out there. Who all saw those? Anybody? See a couple of hands out there, some baby great horned owls. They were facing directly east. So if you got out there in the morning, the light was hitting them just right. And I was able to go out there and grab some baby owl photos. And you know, the one on the right there, you can see him kind of looking at there. The one on the left, if you realize, there's actually 3 owls in that photo, 2 there and then one kind of off in the crevice. If you can just see him kind of sitting there, really hard to see, but he's there. But anyway, there's 3 owls in that photo. But the baby owls were just really, again, fun to watch. And going out there first thing in the morning, and the light was just right for you. I was out there Monday night getting got some great owl photos just Monday night. But the nest, unfortunately, is well past Lincoln Marsh and the neighborhood on somebody's private property. And I've been out with a couple of people, and they said, oh, he says, you know, welcome to come out of my backyard if you want to take pictures. And I thought to myself, this guy's missing an opportunity. He could charge $10 a head and make a big bouts of money if he can do it. But anyway, I guess there are some baby owls, but I'm not going to intrude on somebody's private property to go grab those. But anyway, those are some birds in and around DuPage County. My guess is birds that everybody here's probably seen before, and places I think we can all at least been or get to relatively easy. So a little bit of different photographs of what we've been seeing earlier tonight, but I hope you enjoyed some of my photos. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And last but certainly not least, we got Bonnie Graham with Costa Rica, finish back up in Central America.
All right, so my birds are from Costa Rica. I've been birding seriously for about 12 years. And this was my first trip out of the United States, so I was very excited. There was a group of 5 of us, that we went, and we used Costa Rica Focus to, do a couple itineraries for us. And we picked the one that we, liked. And this was our, we landed in San Jose Airport and we went up north and around, and most places we stayed at least 2 nights. The first place was just a 1-nighter, and then every place else was 2 nights. I had a very difficult time picking out birds, what to show, because, they said, make a target list, what birds you want to see, and I just, any bird would be a target for me there, because I've never seen anything there. So the birds aren't in any particular order. I probably should have put where I saw each bird, but I didn't think about it, so we'll go from here. So I do know my first life bird, or my second life bird, was Lessons Mott. That was a place we had a lunch at a hotel, and they had a beautiful garden, and we just birded there for a couple hours. And it used to be called the Blue Crown Mott, but they changed it for some reason. I don't know why. And then I'm sorry, what?
They split it into 2 or 3 systems.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. There's your answer. And then the other mott we saw was a turquoise browed mott that we saw the last 2 places we stayed at. And of course, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody. I wanted to see the toucans. So the first one we saw was a yellow-throated toucan. And then the other toucan we saw was the keel-billed, also known as the rainbow-billed, or I guess also known as Fruit Loops. So, what I didn't know was they're cavity nesters. So to see one of those birds actually go in a little hole and then come out, I was sure that their beak wouldn't be able to get out. One bird I never heard of was the little toucans, the toucanettes. And they too are cavity nesters. And the one on the right was, I forget what park we were at, but they're obviously nesting, and I don't think they have babies yet, but they were changing the guards of who's sitting on the nest. So one of them went out as the other one waited, and then came in. The picture on the left was taken at a feeding station. So every time we had lunch, instead of sitting in front of the TV and having lunch, you would sit in front of feeders and have your lunch. And they would just have, like platforms with bananas or other fruits. And birds would just come, and this toucanet came, and I think, I'm not even sure what that is, a piece of mango or something maybe. But great views of, most of the birds we saw were probably at feeders, but we did see a lot of them on hikes that we went on. So this is the collared aracari that we saw. This was not at a feeder. This was near a parking lot, and there was a small flock, about 4 or 5 of them just passing through. It almost looks fake, I'm telling you. I mean, and there was, I think there was a fiery bill aracari, but I didn't see it in our group. And then we saw 4 trogons. One, the elegant trogon was along a road too far to take photos of, but we got the black-headed, the slaty-tailed, the female. The male for the slaty-tail was just about 10 feet away from her. A little more prettier with the colors, but I like how the gray and the gray and red kind of contrasted. And then we got the gartered trogons. Again, pretty birds. And this is probably everybody's target bird, is the quetzal here. This was on a hike through the woods. Along the trail, there was either an old nest or a nest that they were using. And there was talk whether the one on the left was a immature male or female. I have some photos of her facing me, so I'm 95% sure that's the female, just by how the inside of the tail came. And the male was further down on our hikes, and we barely saw him. As you can see, he's covered in the reeds, but you can see how long his tail is. I only saw him for a few seconds, and then he flew off, and we never saw them again. But at least we saw them, and that's the main thing. And there are over 50 tanagers about in Costa Rica. And these are just a few. We barely saw the minimum. But these were all at feeders that we saw. I don't know if I have well, I do have a favorite, but just amazing, just the different colors. My target tanager was the blue-gray. I thought that would be hard to see, but we saw them everywhere. And like I said, I've never heard of a palm tanager. I didn't even know what a red-throated ant tanager was. But this was my favorite tanager, was the golden hooded tanager. So you can see it was raining at that time, but we were covered. The birds really don't care if it rains. They're just looking for food. And then you got the euphonias. There's 3 of them, I think. We saw the olive back and the yellow throated. I think there was a yellow crown that I didn't see, but I think one of our other members of our group did see one. And these we saw at feeders, and we saw them along our trails and stuff like that, so. I like these guys. I like the honey creepers. I think the female, the one on the left I like her green more so than her male counterpart there. But, so they have 3 types of honey creepers. They got the green, they have the red-legged, which is the pictures on the 2 left ones, the male and the female, as you can see with the red legs. And then you get the shiny honey creeper, which looks very familiar or similar to the red-legged male. I don't know why they don't call him yellow-legged honey creeper, but but they call them the shiny, and I never realized, I don't know why they did that. Lots of hummingbirds. The second place we stayed at just had feeders along the patio. Here's the sidewalk, and right where Matt is where the feeders are. And actually the one got all the birds at the feeder was actually a phone picture. That's how close it was. And the one that's got the all black, that was a feeder hung by a gazebo, and it was dark behind the gazebo. That's how I got the black background there. So this, and then well, it's this is the well, now I have to go by memory. The saber wing, the violet saber wing, the purple one. I don't got my number. And then the purple.
Violet saberwing.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
No,
cut off.
that's okay. And then the purple throated mountain gem. So the saber wing is probably twice the size as the mountain gems. I think the female looks really pretty on that one. And then the hermits. So we saw the long billed, we got the short billed hermit, and then we got the green hermit. And one of the workers of the place that we were staying at knew where there was a hermit nest. So we went in the woods and he showed us, and the nest is underneath one of these huge leaves that's curled underneath. So when it rains, the babies are protected. And in another day or 2, those babies probably would have fledged because they were just about outgrown of their nests. But that was pretty cool. I waited a long time for the mom to get back, so I think I missed out on some other birds.
Are hermits a type of hummingbird?
Yes.
Yep.
They are hummingbird.
Yeah. And then we got some owls, the spectacled owl. This was walked in the rainforest, and it actually did rain in the rainforest. A place that we sat, had lunch. One of the owners of the lunch, I guess they let little birding groups come and they give us mud boots and they take us out into the rainforest, because you go by yourself, you'll get lost, because he knew exactly where to go. He showed us where some tent bats were. And so he knew where this guy was roosting. We got we went on a night hike there and got the, so the black and white one should be under the black and white owl. So the second one, the middle one, is the mottled owl, and he just caught a beetle or something, and that was from a night hike. The black and white one, we were on our way back to our lodge, and the black and white owl flew up from wherever he was and landed on the branch, so our driver just pulled over and we all got out and were able to take some shots. And the owl didn't even seem to care that we were right there taking photos of him. He was too busy hunting. Then, they got the woodpeckers, the lineated, which is similar to our pileated woodpeckers. They got the black cheek woodpecker, who I don't think that's a nest yet. I think he's looking for a nest. And then the rufous wing was actually not very common in the area that we were at. And it was next to, the feeding stations where I had a lot of those tanagers. And, this guy built his house, he put a patio or a porch all around his house. And he has little bird groups come to his house to watch the birds. He put feeders up there and these birds just happen to nest right there. This is the male feeding the baby right now. And like Mike Warner had the, some type of flower piercer. I've never heard of a flower piercer till I went to Costa Rica. This is the slaty one. The left is the, male, the right is the female. But the same thing, there, you can see how they got the hook on the bill and they pierce that flower for the nectar. And a lot of times you'll see hummingbirds around them too, to grab whatever nectar that the piercers are leaving. And these are, I like these because these birds are like the unknown birds, the birds that people ignore because they're not flashy or anything, but they're the small birds. So a yellow-faced grassquit and the ruddy-capped nightingale thrush was singing. If you think our wood thrush sounds pretty, this guy was unbelievable, just like a flute, just playing in the woods. Very beautiful. And the black-coated ant shrikes, we were on this one hike and all of a sudden we just saw an army of ants marching through and they just like leave a path, a trail, but the birds come and they're snatching all the ants. And there were these black-hooded ant shrike, the females on the left, the males on the right. And it was just being at the right time at the right place to see all these ants. There was like there was another tanager, there was a bicolor ant bird, another type of bird. So this is the common patoo. This wasn't even on my radar. But a lot of times the guides that you have, we had a guide that was with us the whole 9 days we were there. And we were driving in the van out from the lodge that we were at. And he stopped because there was another guide with another couple. And they're talking and they speak Spanish there. And the only Spanish word I know is sí. And so they're talking, blah, 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 blah. And then you hear patoo. And you're like, patoo, did he just say patoo? There's a patoo around here? And he's like, come on, we're gonna go find a. And we were literally standing right by the tree and could not see it until they pointed it out. So that's how, I mean, they are so camouflaged. And then he did a yawn, and that's not even as wide as his mouth went. His mouth went all the way up there. So this is my favorite photo. This little guy would probably my favorite because he was the hardest picture to get. He's about 3.5 inches high, and he was singing in the woods. So we were just standing on the trail waiting for him because he was getting closer. We heard him. And then finally the guide said, there he is, but there's so many leaves that he was hiding behind the leaves. So, or our guide and our other four was sitting here. I just walked like 5 feet in front where there was no leaves. So he was he thought he was still being hidden by the leaves because he was watching the other people. But so I got a shot here. So that, I mean, it was a hard photo to get and it came out pretty well. I was very happy with it. And you can see on top of his head, he's got like the scaly crest and usually there's, I think when he's like in his mating season, it goes up when he wants a lady to flash him up. So, so my 9 days there, I saw 290 species and I got 210 life birds there. So, I think if nobody's ever birded outside the country, I think Costa Rica is a great place to do your first time because it's close enough to home. And it's got a lot of birds, so I am ready to go someplace else now. So.
All right, everybody. Well, how about another round of applause for all speakers?
I can't pass up a teaching moment. So, ant birds, ant shrikes, ant wrens, ant vireos, they don't eat the ants. They actually follow ant swarms, army ants, through the forest floor. As those army ants are moving through the forest floor, they're chasing up insects. That's what the ants are after. They're after insects. So the insects are trying to avoid all the army ants. The antbirds, the ant shrikes, etc., they hang around the edges of the army ant swarm, and they pick off everybody that's trying to escape. So that's why they're called ant.
All right.
They protein, I guess, are the other thing.
Yeah. So, again, thank you, everybody who presented this evening, really appreciate it, I think went reasonably well. So a couple of closing announcements, first off, obviously, this is our first meeting at College of DuPage, I think. Across the board, we're looking for feedback, if you loved it, you hated it. Same thing for anybody who's been on Zoom the whole time, let us know what you thought, we'll be here for the next couple of meetings, then we'll take for the June break. After that, though, we've got sort of decision to make about what the future holds for the meeting location, so is that feedback, welcome.
These chairs are exceedingly comfortable for me.
All right, we've got one vote, I think I've heard a couple other votes for chairs, chairs are nice.
Great.
So, yeah, good, we're glad everybody's happy with the, yep. So we got that. April 10th will be our next full meeting. Here again, I believe it's Jim Giacomo from American Bird Conservancy. So we'll get some more details out about exactly what all is entailed in that presentation in the near future. And then Mike Warner kind of foreshadowed this a little bit, but we're going to try basically on his volunteering and some discussions with the board. We're going to try something new this year. And give folks an opportunity, because obviously we have a lot of people that go some really fantastic places. So on April 3rd, at about 7 o'clock, we're gonna have a Zoom only meeting, where Mike's gonna go really in depth on his Ecuador trip. So lots of opportunity to see, he took thousands of photos, lots of opportunity to see all those photos in even more detail. But he's also gonna work in a lot of information about where they went birding, how you get there, things like that. And sort of the goal, again, we'll look for feedback on this sort of thing as far as member response and things like that. But the goal is, over time, if we can get folks to, people are interested in presenting, we can kind of sort of build up something of a travel guide for far-flung places and things like that. Because I know if you're trying to plan one of these trips to one of these fantastic places, it's a little daunting. And you want to know where to find the birds, especially for the amount of money you have to invest for this. So, it's something we're gonna try out. Again, that'll come out via email shortly. It'll be in the next Drumming's registration link on Zoom. So keep an eye out for that, and hope to see you all on Zoom on the 3rd. Thank you, everybody.